Together with our global and U.S. partners and constituents, Peace U.S.A. World Mission is focusing on 3 critical global initiatives in poverty alleviation, evangelism, and reconciliation. Today's presentation will focus on reconciliation. My pre-divinity school training was in social work. I served as a child protection social worker, and my most recent assignment as a mission co-worker was in South Sudan. And I worked with Reconcile, where much of the work with my Sudanese colleagues and I were engaged in was focused on preventing and responding to violence against women and children in that war-torn country. So I was delighted when we chose the theme, Ending Violence Against Women and Children, for the theme of our campaign that our Reconciliation Catalyst, Shannon Beck, is leading. 1 in 3 women are abused in the world during their lifetime. 80% of the 20 million trafficked each year are women and children, and every 6 seconds a woman is being raped. And as Christians, we're called to respond in Jesus' words, I'm telling you the solemn truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me. And we are responding. In February, the Presbyterian Mission Agency Board voted to join We Will Speak Out U.S., a movement of diverse faith groups from across the U.S. who've joined together with other leaders for advocacy and action to end the silence around sexual and gender-based violence. The U.S. rates of gender-based violence are very sobering. It's estimated that 1 in 4 women is sexually abused. This is totally unacceptable and must be addressed. But the rates are even more shocking as one surveys the situation across the continent of Africa. According to a UNICEF source, 41% of women in Malawi, just as one example, experience physical or sexual violence, while 65% of the girls and 35% of the boys will experience some form of child abuse. There are all kinds of reasons behind these grim statistics, which are fairly representative of most of the 19 countries where Peace USA has active partnerships in Africa. But lack of access to education and poverty are foundational. And the sad thing is that in the midst of such a tragedy, there are few resources to deal with the situation. In most countries in Africa, the government's capacity to provide child protection services is very limited, as are services to women who are abused, such as shelters, counseling, and legal support, compared to what we have in the States. Peace USA has put a high priority on addressing issues that affect women and children in Africa. And a year ago, we appointed 2 mission co-workers, Reverend Janet Guyer and Christy Boyd, as facilitators for women's and children's interests. Janet's based in Malawi with responsibilities in Zambia, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe, and Christy is based in DR Congo with responsibilities in Madagascar, South Sudan, Rwanda, and Niger. While they may not have the resources to send out flashy materials about their work, our church partners, with the support of Peace USA mission co-workers, are standing in the gap, engaging in advocacy, and providing some amazing ministries and services to women and children who are experiencing violence, and doing only what the church can do, sharing the hope of Jesus Christ with these women and children. During our time together, I'm going to share some of these courageous ministries, all of which Janet and Christy are supporting. Please think about how God may be calling you and your church to join in this work. I'm beginning with the ministry of Reverend Heli Bao from Madagascar. Heli Bao is the chaplain for our partner church in Madagascar, FJKM, Ministry to the Marginalized. She is pictured here with her good friend and colleague, mission co-worker Elizabeth Turk. Heli Bao is trained as a pastor and a social worker, and her ministry reaches from working with prostitutes and street families to the highest level as she chairs the Madagascar Council of Churches National Reconciliation Committee. One of the places where FJKM is serving is on the island of St. Marie, where violence against children is rampant and related to sex tourism. Let's hear her describe one of the situations she has encountered.
When we arrived at the airport, I would like us to go on foot on the beach there. And I have seen a little girl, maybe at 8 or 9 years old, and she already cried and cried. And when I come closer to her, I have seen that that she is doing sexual relation with a old white man. The person is not far from her. And then I discussed with the mom, what are you doing with this little girl? Because for me it's like sexual harassment against a little girl. And then we negotiated with a car, and I asked the man to be with us. We took the little girl at the hospital, and after the hospital we moved to the police office at St. Marie village.
Okay, the stories ended sadly, at least initially. Heli Bao explained that the laws in Madagascar affirm these communities' rights to define marriage in a traditional way, which included marriage of young girls. So there was no legal action that could be taken to help this little girl. But the church has faithfully addressed this matter through community education and organization. In meetings like this, in which they bring church and community members to discuss the rights of children and how they can work together to protect those rights. Peace U.S.A. mission co-worker Jan Heckler has been accompanying Reverend Heli Bao in this work. Reverend Heli Bao also directs an FJKM program in the capital city of Madagascar, Antananarivo. She and her staff are addressing the problem of rapidly increasing number of girls and families being driven to the States since the political crisis in the past 4 years. Reverend Heli Bao and her staff spend 2 nights a week out on the streets of Tana ministering to the families, as well as to the girls who are caught up in prostitution. I had the privilege of joining her one evening in May. That's me on the far left. It was amazing to see Heli Bao in action. She truly is a pastor of these girls and the families who live on the street. Everyone greeted her. Everyone wanted to pray with her. We probably prayed with 60 girls that evening. Church services are also held for them. Using her gifts as a pastor and social worker and with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, Heli Bao senses which ones are ready to leave the street and has a reintegration program for those who choose to do so. The reintegration program includes housing, job training, counseling, and legal services. About 20% of the prostitutes and street families she interacts with on the streets in a given year are able to make the break and re-enter society. Some of these young women enter the skills training program that the church offers. They are given skills in sewing, restaurant work, and literacy, as well as counseling and spiritual direction. They're invited to follow the healer of all wounded hearts, Jesus Christ. Reverend Heli Bao is also deeply involved in addressing the human trafficking atrocity between Madagascar and Kuwait. When she heard of church members being entrapped in Kuwait against their own will, she reached out to Presbyterian Church U.S.A. and our regional liaison for Madagascar, Doug Tilton, who also has advocacy responsibilities. With help from the Peace U.S.A. Human Trafficking Roundtable, Doug put her in touch with sources to help and spent much time in consultation with her, often an hour and a half to 2 hours a day before she made a trip to Kuwait to address the problem head-on. This year, about 55 women have been returned from Kuwait due to the diligent and courageous efforts of Reverend Heli Bao and Doug Tilton. But this is out of 7,300 estimated women in such situations in Kuwait. Another cause of violence against women and children is harmful cultural practices. Jan Heckler has shared with us about a visit to a whole community that's been driven from their homes by superstition and discrimination. During the women's pregnancies in the Antemaro ethnic group, the women are subjected to drinking poisonous tea, forcing them to curse themselves during labor, asking for death if they've been unfaithful, having spells cast threatening death, also if they've been unfaithful. This group believes that if you are innocent, you'll survive. Now, I know these stories, it gets heavy, all of the things that we're hearing, and it's certainly the most negative parts of cultures that have beautiful, beautiful traditions as well. So please remember to think about the positive, because the fact is the church is there, and the church is addressing these needs. So quite reasonably, many of these women would rather leave this village than endure these things. So rejected and stigmatized, they're attempting new lives in a hideaway village, and the name which means under the banana tree. The women asked FJKM to help them establish a church. Pastor Mia Mosa and Jan Heckler are part of FJKM's response. Another cultural practice that is harmful is evidenced in the treatment of widows in many places. Due to superstitions rooted in the African traditional belief system, widows are thought to be implicated in their husband's death. In-laws may take all household goods, property, and the land she shared with her late husband, and even her children can be taken. Others are forced to marry a brother-in-law. The Presbyterian Church of Congo became part of the solution by organizing seminars to sensitize and train key community leaders in basic human rights, women's and children's rights in the Congo's constitution, legal ramifications of traditional versus civil marriage, and the need and method for couples to register their marriage and obtain credentials, the certificates. The church also accompanies widows in Mbujimai, teaching them trades like sewing, tie-dye, and soap making, and provides seed money to start businesses. According to traditional beliefs in many parts of Congo, when someone dies, experiences injury or serious illness, the family looks to the cause, someone to blame. In this process, children as well as women are being increasingly accused of being witches. Children with emotional, cognitive, or physical challenges are often victims of these accusations. The children and women are then cast out of the family. Traumatized by these experiences, they're left to their own resources, vulnerable to exploitation, prostitution, and delinquency. The Presbyterian Church in Congo seeks an authentic Christian response to transform the way communities deal with witchcraft as a spiritual reality in their life. To address the issues which lead a family to believe their child is affected, pastors make a home visit and use Christian symbolism to pray over and bless the child. The foyer is a transition home for abandoned girls, many accused as witches. It offers Christian nurture and education, and it negotiates the community for their reintegration. The girls are not there long-term. It's a short-term response until they can be reintegrated. The Presbyterian University of Shepherd and Lapsley also held a seminar on witchcraft, Bible and the Church, on Congolese law which prohibits child witch accusations, and treaties on children's rights. And my office is sponsoring another such training next month. Street children are often those who are accused of witchcraft. In Kananga, adult teams from 7 churches in each of the 2 presbyteries are trained as family supporters for children in crisis. The church teams are assigned to these families in which they listen to the parents, reflect on their thoughts and plans, be their cheerleaders, and help them share their Christian faith with their families. Bob and Christy Rice assist with this program. In the Presbyterian Church of Congo's Community Health Evangelism program in Congo, Ruth Brown reports that many, if not most, parents with children who are extremely malnourished respond to education about nutrition by saying, "Food has nothing to do with my child's condition. My child is sickly because she has had a curse placed on her or him." In the program, Bible passages are reviewed at every training and at every community meeting. And Ruth Brown shared that the Che group that she worked with discussed how the Bible records that Christ was touching and holding children. To the Che members, this meant that children could not be cursed, could not be evil, if Jesus was touching them. So these Che workers are sharing this story with the parents of malnourished children. Early marriage is another form of violence against women and children. 41% of the women in West and Central Africa are married before the age of 18, which poses life-threatening risks for adolescent girls. Pregnancy-related complications are the leading cause of death for 15 to 19-year-old girls in this region. Traditionally in Congo, parents arrange for the daughters to marry at a young age and forego their education. And without education, their families are also at risk. In addition to advocating against early marriage, the Presbyterian Church in Kinshasa built a multi-purpose center to offer vulnerable teenage girls sewing classes, hotel and restaurant training, and beauty courses, in addition to counseling and Christian formation. Early marriage isn't limited to Congo. In northern Malawi, there's an ethnic group which marries girls under 12 years old. The Church of Central Africa Presbyterian Mpato Ngulue directs a project which has a goal of preventing early marriages by keeping girls in school. Mothers and fathers groups have been established to encourage young people to stay in school or to return to school. They work to establish bylaws specifying children's rights, which are agreed upon by the community, and the mothers and fathers groups are trained to monitor what is happening. If a girl has already been forced into marriage, the mothers and fathers group will work with the parents of the girl and, if necessary, offer higher authority figures to help the girl out of that situation. This is a group of girls who've been rescued. The girls are then encouraged to get back to school. In South Sudan, dowry is a cultural practice leading to early marriage. And we're going to hear a chol.
You see, girls are being termed as wealth. Because if you have a girl, then you don't have a problem. Even you don't have cattle this year, you will like have, after 10 years you will have cattle because you have this girl. So this girl is termed as a wealth. Because of the high dowry will be given to the man that you don't like. Because of his dowry, he has 200, and the man I love has 50 cows, 50 head of cattle. And this one have 200. I'll be forced by my family, by my parents, to go to the 100 or the 200 cattle because they want it. I'm being termed as wealth to them. Most of the majority of these marriages, they are not healthy marriages. Because you will be there and you, at the back of your mind there you have that, oh, this man, I was forced to marry this man, and if there is anything, then even the man will strict that you have to do what, yeah, you have to say yes, you have to say yes. I mean,
Elizabeth Ajak of the Women's Department of the Presbyterian Church of South Sudan and mission co-worker Aliama George have led trainings to address such violations of rights, and Presbyterian Women has been supporting that training. Another root cause of violence against women and children is just plain old poverty. The Presbyterian Church in Rwanda has found that because of poverty, many children are heading from rural areas to the capital city of Kigali and end up in abusive situations as child laborers. I was privileged to be with the Presbyterian women in Rwanda, in which plans were being made to address this form of exploitation against children and children's rights. The Blantyre Synod Health and Development Commission addresses issues of violence against women and children in many of their programs for vulnerable children. In children's corners and community-based child care centers, the children have individual managers who monitor their rights and work with the community to develop its own child protection bylaws. If it is found that children are experiencing violence, they will be referred to the appropriate authority or organization, as the OVC program works collaboratively with other service providers in the community, the chief, the police, the hospital, and other providers of psychosocial support. CCAP Zambia also works with orphans and vulnerable children who are not in school through its community school program, in which more than 30 churches provide schools using volunteer teachers for children who aren't attending school. These are vulnerable children. The teachers and volunteer social workers are given specific training on how to work with these children and families who are at risk for abuse and neglect. Conflict is also a major cause of abuse of women and children in Africa. Since modern history, Congo has been plagued by the exploitation of its human and natural resources. Recurrent conflicts have triggered rape as a tactic of war by militias who are funded from the illegal exploitation and trade of minerals in the East. Impunity has driven sexual and gender-based violence to epidemic proportions, leaving scores of young girls and women traumatized and pregnant. Married survivors are rejected by their spouses, and life for the child mothers and their babies is bleak due to lack of parental skills and support. The complex needs of over 40,000 rape survivors have been met with between the grassroots initiatives of the Protestant Church in Congo, as well as efforts in the Ushindi Project, which Larry Streschley is working with. Trained volunteer counselors offer psychosocial and medical aid. Centers have been set up for shelter, pastoral care, and trauma healing, and survivors learn trades. Families foster war orphans for whom schooling is sponsored, and adult rape survivors are offered literacy classes. Mining companies often prefer dealing with child miners as they are easier to bargain with, and in a context of poverty, families send the kids. Children skip class for a little cash in the mines or drop out of school and migrate away from the family. Women are asked sexual favors in exchange for better pay for their gems. Children and women are particularly affected by labor conditions and health hazards. The Presbyterian Church of Congo is working to improve the situation for women and children in the mines. Working in 13 mining communities, the CPC ensured the reintegration of 627 child miners back into their families and schools in collaboration with other church and civic organizations. And we all know about the South Sudan conflict and how it has caused violence against women and children. First 23 years of civil war, a very short period of working through an interim government to secure a decision for the country in which the South decided to go for independence. But since December 15th, the whole country has been in severe conflict, and we all know that the main victims are women and children. We have several mission co-workers still there working in South Sudan. Much of their work is being a presence of our concern and care for them. Some of the programs that they initially were expecting to be working on have slowed down, but many of the things that they're doing are so important. Lisa Wagstaff has been a part of trauma healing workshops with the church there. Well, as important as the on-the-ground programs are to prevent and address violence, academic research and instruction are also necessary. Our partner in Rwanda, the Presbyterian Church, carried out a seminar on violence and conflict management in families and communities last month at their denominational seminary. Chip Hartwig was part of that seminar, and Kay Day serves on the faculty of this seminary and was part of the seminar. Debbie Blaine teaches at the Nile Theological College, and in her theology courses, she very strongly addresses issues of women's and children's rights. As part of a project in mission co-worker Carolyn Weber's course, Almaz, one of her students, chose working to help women deal with get out of prostitution as a project. Carolyn made arrangements for Almaz to visit a project for women who wanted to leave prostitution. The women that they visited in this project are living in a secure compound where they have an intensive schedule of sports, Bible study, disciple classes, counseling, and learning new job skills. Community-based trauma healing and peace studies are the main courses offered at the Reconcile Peace Institute. Students are given skills for peace building and trauma healing, and again, addressing the main victims of the conflict, women and children. There are examples of advocacy within Africa, things that our church departments are doing to discuss with their governments how to address these needs. A very good one is the Synod of Livingstonia's Church and Society Department, which trains child protection committees in each community. The committee receives complaints if a child's been raped, forced into early marriage, or other forms of abuse. They then assess the situation and refer the parties on to the appropriate entity. A rape perpetrator will be reported to the police, and if a child needs medical care, they'll be referred to the community medical clinic. The child protection committees also have the responsibility to monitor their communities for any violation of children's rights, and the Community Paralegal Project has a lawyer and 4 paralegals to where women and children can make reports. Advocacy in the U.S. is extremely important as well. As we all know, our international policy is often at the root of some of these causes, and we have a powerful voice that we need to use. Just one example of this was Congo Advocacy Day that we had last year to support House Resolution 131 on protecting human rights in Congo. This included calls on the U.S. government to build peace in the East and on the Congolese government to investigate and prosecute war crimes, including specifically crimes against women and children. This is just one of the many situations which this office is advocating on behalf of women and children. The Miriam Ibrahim situation in Sudan, where a woman was convicted to death and lashings for allegedly converting to Christianity. much work on South Sudan in ending the war and other countries. It's also very important in terms of our advocacy to give our partners voice personally to the UN and to Capitol Hill, which means bringing them in. Our International Peacemakers program often provides the forum for us to do this. This year, 3 international peacemakers from Malawi, South Sudan, and Madagascar will be visiting the UN and Office of Public Witness offices. So how can you become part of this campaign? I have several suggestions, and there's many more. Bring a small team to come and see our partner in Africa's efforts to end the violence. Contribute to our partners' projects. Join the We Will Speak Out campaign. Encourage your congregation in partners in Africa to connect with this campaign. Join the advocacy efforts of the mission networks with the Office of Public Witness and Ministry at the United Nations. And also, please consider joining our mission coworkers support team. What our partners continually tell us is that they need accompaniment and desire that in the process of addressing these very serious challenges. Get their Mission Connections letters, contribute to their sending and support, Skype with them on a Sunday morning, and pray for them. As you can see, there are many of them involved in this work, and they need your partnership as well.